Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Planting Not Berries Media and Journalism panel. We have exciting guests here. I will pass it on to them, but I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm Siobhan Easton. I'm an intern at Planted Not Buried. I currently attend UNC Charlotte in North Carolina as a senior, and I'm pursuing communications and mass media and international studies degrees. And that's me. Now, I'm starting with Mike, and I'm passing it on to you.
Well, thank you, Savannah. Thank you, and good evening to everybody on the call. My name is Michael Lyle, Jr. I am based here in Connecticut. I live in Hartford. I am a radio news anchor and a reporter for a bevy of stations here. As you see on the screen here, I work for New England Public Media in Springfield, Massachusetts as a weekend news anchor. I also work at WTIC 1080 in Hartford, also as a weekend news anchor. And also during the week, it's not mentioned here, but I also work as a Connecticut reporter, the beat reporter for the state for WSHU Public Radio, which is based out of Fairfield. And if that's not enough, I also am an adjunct professor at Quinnipiac University here, where I got my master's degree. And I'm teaching 2 courses in public speaking and also in Black media. I'm also the vice president of broadcast for the local NEBJ chapter here in New England, the Southern New England Association of Black Journalists. I've won 4 AP awards for my work here in covering news in Connecticut, and I've been here for 19 years and looks like counting. So I'm glad to be a part of this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike. Oh, sorry. Okay, we have Faith.
All right. That's going to be a tough one to follow, so bear with me now.
No,
Mike has a long resume.
Stop. No, it's not. You got this, girl. Handle that.
My name is Faith Jessie. I am an anchor reporter at Newsday here in New York. We cover all things Long Island, as well as things in the city. And I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to my role here at Newsday, I was with the NBC affiliate in Las Vegas, KSNV, for 4 years, working as a morning reporter and fill-in anchor. And we covered everything from breaking news of the day to politics to all those fun shows in Vegas, the feature stuff. I did a little bit of sports. I know Elisa and Renee gonna roll their eyes at me. I did a little bit of sports, a little bit, like a month in Vegas. I graduated from USC, go Trojans, and I was a founding member of the National Association of Black Journalists at USC. And yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we have Elisa. Hey, welcome.
Hi guys. Hey guys. I'm jumping on a little late. Please forgive me. As you guys know, it is the start of the preseason within NFL. So if you hear a little pinging, that's just my job going off in the background. So I have been working in sports for as long as I can remember. I currently work at NFL Network. I am in charge of their Latino operations. So I run their LSnap NFL account, which is the main Latino account for the NFL. I'm also in charge of marketing to those demographics across the US and helping out NFL clubs market to their Latino audiences in their respective cities. I also host on the LSnap channel, which is my main focus. And I also host for the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm the in-stadium host there. And so that's basically been my just constant going around in a circle. I do football during the fall, and then as soon as Super Bowl is over, pitchers and catchers report to spring training, and then I do baseball until football starts again. So there's a little bit of overlap, but really excited about this year's class within the NFL, excited about the Latino initiatives that we have going, and super excited to be here and represent that with everyone that's joined today.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to open the conversation with a couple of questions, and then we're going to have, if we have time, a small Q&A session. That's fine with everyone.
Sure.
Okay, so my first question for you guys is, what would you say you find most fulfilling about the job you guys do? And I can start with you, Mike.
It pays? No. No, no, it's a good job that I'm doing up here. I love the work I'm doing. I'm involved with community work, being a voice for reason and for information in this part of New England. Doing it for over 2 decades or close to 2 decades now makes it fulfilling. There's always a new challenge I find when I go out in the street covering stories around here. You never know what the day is going to bring. You never know what kind of topics you're going to cover. So much is going on in the world, and I think that's what makes the job so fulfilling, is that you're tasked with going out there and digging up the facts and information that people don't necessarily have the resources to. So that's where I come in, to bring a voice to those that don't have any voices, especially in some of the urban communities here in Connecticut that I cover. In fact, I was just in New Haven today for an event about the Puerto Rican Day Parade that's going to be coming back to the city this weekend. It was canceled for the last 2 years due to COVID. So covering stories of that nature and those human interest stories, I think, is what's one of the fun things about this job. And if that's not enough, then being on the radio on the weekends to be a voice of those who don't know what's going on in their own communities, to talk about what's happening here, what's happening there, just being a beacon of information. I think that's what people come to find that's good about local news in their own communities, which is becoming a little bit of a hot button topic lately. But I think that more local news you have in your community, the better off you'll be, because that's what they come to you for.
Yeah.
I would definitely add on to that, the voice to the voiceless, which you do hear journalists say a lot, but it's so real because so many people don't have that medium. Thanks to the internet, a lot of people do have a voice now, but a journalist can really flesh it out, get those resources like Mike was talking about. We might have contacts at the police department or in legislation, or that can get those questions answered for folks. For me, what I really think is fulfilling about my work is being able to teach somebody something that they didn't know, or teach somebody something that'll make them go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I kind of want to look into that. I want to look into it a little bit deeper, as well as putting a smile on people's faces, those stories that really just brighten up your day. Because I feel like so often we are bogged down by just, you turn on the TV and it's like, who died? Oh my God, the world is burning down, inflation, this, and that. So being able to find those little nuggets, even if there is inflation story where it's like, oh my gosh, bacon is $15.99 for a slice. Is there some way, a nugget of information that I can kind of make you smile, or a funny story around that bacon price increasing or something like that? So when you find those little nuggets and people are like, oh, I really liked how you did that, or that really made me smile the other day, I really needed that, I feel like that's very fulfilling.
Would you say that there is sometimes obstacles you face when you are naturally in an effort to be the voice of people that are unheard, with there might be in any profession, maybe like obstacles from your job or political climate?
Want me to take that one?
Sure.
Actually, we haven't heard from Elisa yet. Do you want to chime in on this, Elisa? I know we haven't had your response. If you want to jump in.
No, you're good. You're good. You know, me and Faith, I've known Faith for a long time. And so seeing her transition into covering media and covering celebrities and more entertainment to covering more hard-hitting news, interviewing Dr. Fauci when she was in New York, it's been really interesting to see her grow and see her find her own space within a completely different medium than we had originally come from, you know, especially going to USC together. So I always lean on her when I need to find like a more serious approach to things. So being in sports, you know, we always try to bring happiness to people, right? And I think the biggest fulfillment that I get from my side is leveling up people that look like me, you know, having Latinas and Latinos in the NFL feel seen. And I think the biggest win that I had last season was getting Spanish announcers recognized by the NFL. And whether that's the NFL's main page reposting them, highlighting one of their calls that they did, and doing it more regularly versus just during Hispanic Heritage Month or just during Super Bowl, you know, but doing it every single week. And I've had Spanish announcers message me and say like, you know, thank you so much. Like we feel seen. We feel like we finally feel part of the NFL family. And, you know, it really hits you that to them, it's like, oh, the NFL recognized me, you know, which they did. But it was also me just being like, we should do this. And then pitching it to 3 people and then those 3 people saying yes. And the fact that, you know, that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to people in positions making positive decisions that end up helping and shining light on people that aren't represented as much. And as we all know, especially in the NFL, despite majority of the league being Black, there's not a high ownership of Black people, of Latino people. And so we also need to be shown in a way that shows like we love the NFL, we're a part of the NFL, and there's different ways to be a part of the NFL. It's not just on camera, it's not just as a fan, but personnel, executive, chief officers, GMs, head coaches. And I think just showing that presence and showing that there's a space for everyone within this giant league was really important. And so, leaning on, like I said, with Faith and seeing how she covers things, it shined a light into the bigger side. Like, okay, like sports is supposed to unify, but we have to unify on more days out of the week than just Sunday. So I think that's very important.
Faith, I think you're muted.
I felt what you were saying, Faith, even though I didn't hear it.
You're muted.
There you go.
I said sports can be divisive too. I see Twitter. Y'all be wilding over there. My bad.
No, I think it is a challenge, especially in this crazy politically charged environment, especially with me being a general assignment reporter. And of course, you get the feedback from people that say that news is fake, or it's what somebody who will remain nameless has once said, it was the enemy of the American people. I think when people of those political different backgrounds talk that mess, it's a slap in our faces, because we got into this business for the purpose of being truthful and informative about what we do for a living. It's not about trying to spin our own agendas to make it sound like that we have something that others don't have. I mean, we're here to tell the truth and nothing but. And we're also here to hold our elected officials accountable for whatever goes on in our backyards, in our country, or in our communities. I think that's a job I take with a great amount of pride, because I'm interviewing politicians here in Connecticut almost every day of the week. I mean, it's an election year, so I'm chasing the governor around the state. I'm chasing my mayor here in Hartford around, and I'm chasing the senators, both two senators from the state around all the time. But I'm asking them the tough questions, because this is who is going to vote for you. You got people that are going to be listening to my reports, and these are the people that are going to be casting their votes for you in a few months, and they need to know why you are the one they should vote for based on what you're doing here in the state that's going to help them, like Faith alluded to earlier, about inflation, gas prices, COVID, healthcare, all these different topics that people want to know and talk about. This is what's important to them and their families. So it's important that we have the resources to tell these stories, and our elected officials need to know this is what the people are asking these questions about. So what do you do, and what do you say to them to convince them that you are the right person to help run this community or the state, and that they can feel comfortable with the vote that they're going to cast for you?
And, I want to add to that, because so we're the second tier of that. So Michael and Faith, they do the groundwork of spreading out that information, and the NFL gets a lot of flack. So for example, we are running NFL votes this year, once again, where basically clubs are opening their stadiums to be voting booths during the campaign this year. And a lot of people are like, why are you guys doing this? like leave politics out of sports. And what we try to emphasize is like, we're not telling you who to vote for. We're just trying to give you guys a space that's accessible, that ties to the team that you love. And we're not telling you to vote one way or another. We're just trying to tell you, like, hey, I know it's football season, but the real world is actually happening, and you need to pay attention to that. Now, we're not going to tell you what you should pay attention to directly, but we're just, nudging you along, for that. And so it's such a different medium, because you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, in a way, right? So if the NFL just stays out of it and just acts like nothing's going on, that's a problem, because we're too big of a corporation. We're too big of an influence within America to not say anything. But then if we lean any kind of way, it's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you trying to influence? And it's just like, you try to find the balance by just letting people know, hey, whether you guys decide to do it or not, just remember the real world is going on outside of sports. Sports brings us together, but we also need to come together to make real change in this country, which affects you, which affects me, which affects your sports, because there are players that will it will come a time, I see it, soon, where players are going to be like, you know what, I don't want to play in this state because it doesn't reflect what I believe in. I don't want to get drafted to this place because the women in my family fought for this, and it's gonna trickle down at some point. And so players want to be heard, and teams want to take a stand and stay in solidarity with their players. And so the political climate is always a really touchy issue when it comes to sports, but I do applaud the NFL and our initiatives by just saying, like, look, whether you do it or not, this is where you can go, this is how your team is going to help you do this. The rest is up to you. So it's always a balancing act when it comes to things like that. Also, ignore me looking down. I have to write a caption, so don't hold it against me.
Fine.
Malik Willis had his first touchdown, so
You're fine. I'm really curious to hear about who you guys looked up to when you were building your career. Because when you're maybe just a student, you're not where you want to be in your career, and you always look up to maybe a family member, or you have an idol that pushes you to get where you want to be. I wondered who that was for you guys.
I'll say, I mean, it's very cliche, but like when I was a kid, I remember like my mom would write these little notes, and she would always sign them "your life coach." And I thought it was so lame. I was like, please stop writing these notes and putting them in my backpack, Mom. And I'm so happy that she did, though, because it helped me to build this confidence that you don't see in all women. And sometimes it's confusing to me because I try to, like, they say hang around the people that you want to be around, right? Want to be like. So you connect yourself with different people. And so when I see somebody who doesn't have as much confidence or whatever, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why is that? And then I realized, oh, they didn't have somebody like my mom when they were a kid instilling that you can do anything that you put your mind to, like, but you can actually do it. It just takes a little bit of work. Or make sure you're carrying yourself. Like, don't let people see you sweat. Even if somebody is being rude to you, be nasty with a smile, like stuff like that. Things that are going to help you get ahead in life. And because of that confidence, no matter what path I tried to take, because of what she instilled into me when I was between the ages of that I could read. So when can you read? 6, 7, until high school, that has not only impacted my life, but impacted the people who are around me, because I feel like that bleeds off. And then of course, you have people that you look up to in media. And for me, she's not even on CNN anymore. But I remember I was just at home doing PR out of school. First, I was working at a theme park. That was my first job out of school, making $9 an hour with a bunch of student loans from USC. And then I got into PR, and I was watching Brooke Baldwin on CNN. And I was like, I liked her personality. I liked how real she was. Like, she was just spitting, like it was her show. She was anchoring, but she was just like having a conversation with me. And I was like, I can do that. I want to do that. And that's when I started putting together a reel and literally emailing every single person that I knew in NABJ, help me get on TV, please. And then I eventually got there.
So what about you, Lisa?
It was one of those things where I looked up, and I know Faith can relate to this, and potentially Mike, I'm probably anyone on this call, where you don't know who. I related to pieces of different people because I didn't see someone that looked like me. And, being a Latina, I have this light on me, but I'm like a darker skin tone Latina. And my sister, my mom, everyone in my family is super light skinned, like super duper light skinned. And, those are the Latinas I saw on TV, but I never saw a darker skin tone Latina on TV that would do with sports, and I always kind of try to find people that I would like to be like. So obviously the OGs, I got the Pam Olivers, the Michelle Tafoyas, Tracy Wolfson, like, those reporters that have really been in the trenches, done the work, have been on TV forever. And then now, you're seeing the influx, you're seeing the Maria Taylors, you're seeing the, Carrie Champions of the world, and those kind of women that I noticed when they started being their authentic self is when they were the happiest. Like I follow them when their careers were at ESPN, things like that. it was kind of like when they were like, you know what, part of my language, but like, fuck this, like, I'm gonna do what I need to do to keep my happiness, that they did their best work, and now, like, you have the face of Sunday Night Football, and you have Carrie Champion doing great things on Vice and podcasts and things like that. And that really instilled a jolt into me where it's like, you have to be you, and you can't always fall in to certain corporate sides of things. And so looking up to professionally, I looked up to them. And then the biggest influence, again, professionally, it was Alana Rizzo. She was a reporter for the Dodgers for many years. I was her field producer. I was her right hand, and she taught me how to be professional, but still be myself. And I know that sounds weird because, ideally they go hand in hand, but I got a mouth on me sometimes. And so I had to learn to cultivate that in a way where you get your point across, but you get it across in a way that people will actually listen to you, and just because you're the loudest doesn't mean that you're the smartest, doesn't mean that you're the most correct. And so she taught me baseball. She taught me how to score a game. She taught me how to pay it forward. She taught me so many things about being a woman on, a Latina woman in sports. She's of Cuban descent. So it's like you kind of put all these pieces together and you kind of realize like, wow, like I look up to all these people within sports and trying to pave that way for the next person, that looks like me or doesn't look like me, but likes the way I sound or likes the way that I host and things like that. And then obviously, as let's face it, like my parents, being first generation immigrants here to the US, like hard work was always a thing. And so my dad always just told me like, look, like I gave you this last name, don't ruin it. He's like, I worked really hard for my last name to mean something and I'm giving it to you. So make sure that you make it mean something too. And my parents don't give me advice like that all the time, but like the advice that they gave me in the sporadic time they did, like it just stuck, and my dad will always say, like, treat everyone the same. Like, I don't care who they are. I don't care what they are. Like, you treat everyone the same. You're nice to them. You're kind to them. From the CEO to the valet guy, you treat them with the same respect. And that will always come full circle at some point, whether you feel it right now, whether you know it right now or not. And Faith knows our industry is so small that you come across people and it's like, oh my God, I work with this person, or, oh, I know this person. And I've had people be very disrespectful to me. And then they came up where I was producing a show that they wanted to host on. And I was like, nope, you know what I mean? And so you always have to be mindful of all those things. And I think like having a community of people to lean on was the biggest thing. And I'll close out with this. One of the biggest things that I was taught was, you don't build with the people that are above you. You build with the people that are next to you. And to Faith's point, you attract people that have the same goals as you, have the same ambitious confidence. And that's who you build with, because that's your competition in 5 years. That's who you're going to see down the line in 10 years. The people above you, they already made it. They're already there, and by the time you get there, if they're still there, there's a good chance you're not going to beat them anyway, or there's a chance that, they're going to move on to other things. And so you want to build with the team that you see, because the trenches are where you guys all start out, and some will get farther quicker, some will not. But staying connected to all those things makes it easier to maneuver in this industry, because there's always, oh, I know this person that'd be perfect for this job. And you give a call, and that's all it takes. And then your talent, will keep you there, but sometimes that connection will get you there.
All the time, that connection will get you there. Period.
Yeah. Well, I'm a radio guy, and when I was young, I used to listen to the radio at nighttime when I was just going to bed. I would just have the radio on, and for some strange unknown reason, I would have the radio playing through the wee hours of the midnight until the morning hours. And my mom would come into my room and ask me, "Why is that radio still on?" I said, "I was just listening to the news radio. I don't know. I just had it on for just whatever. I just wanted to listen to the radio." So that's how this whole thing of me getting into media started. When I was listening to a radio station, and I'm from New Jersey, so my station growing up was WCBS 880 in New York. Faith, I know you know about that station because that's like the #1 station in the city. But that was my station growing up, listening to all news radio, and it was something that got attracted to because it was something that was different, and it was something that was unlike a television where I get all my news even after the 11 o'clock news goes off. I mean, it's all night news. It's New York. It's a major market. It's even in my own backyard in New Jersey where I was growing up. So that's how I became infatuated with radio broadcasting. The other side of that, though, is that I was a print writer for about 5, 6 years. I got into doing writing for my high school newspaper when I was a junior, and I wanted to be a sports reporter. And I do dibble and dabble out of sports too, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just a general reporter. I do cover sports. I mean, I live in the state where we have a lot of sports teams here in Connecticut. It's UConn. We have a WNBA team I cover here as well. So I do dibble and dabble out of the sports world a little bit. But I got the niche when I was in high school, wanting to be a sports reporter, and I carried that over into college. And I was a sports junkie. I still am. But years have passed, and then eventually I got a break working here at ESPN was my big first break out of college. Like you, Faith, I had to pay the rent. I haven't paying all these loans from Howard undergraduate after all those years I spent getting a degree. HU, the real HU, by the way. I'm sorry, no, selfish plug here, shameless plug. But it was my first job was at ESPN here in Connecticut, where they headquartered here in Bristol. I worked there for 6 years, and then ironically, I got a job in their radio department. So I was a production assistant there for 6 years. I met all the big wigs that we still see on TV. God bless his soul. Stuart Scott was one of my first guys I met there. I worked with Colin Cowherd. I worked with Dan Patrick. I worked with Mike Greenberg and Golick. I worked with a whole bunch of folks over the years. Stephen A. Smith. I worked with all those guys for the 6 years, and I got my feet wet mostly behind the scenes. But eventually, I wanted to do more than just be a behind the scenes guy. I wanted to be an on-air reporter or a talent. So I started to venture out around Connecticut. Got a couple of breaks and did some local radio and started covering more of the local scene in addition to the collegiate sports team here as well. And I've been doing that ever since. Like I said, things have shifted and I'm doing more spot news and covering politics, but occasionally there are a couple of sports stories I do chase around here. And ironically enough, there's one I'm working on next week in New Haven. The coach at a high school. He was there since the 1950s. He's retiring after all these years. So that's a nice little two-way feature I'm working on. And in terms of who I looked up to, I wouldn't say, I think there was one guy, and interestingly enough, it happened last week when I was in Las Vegas for the NAHA convention. His name is Maurice Dubois. He works at WCBS TV now in New York. But when I was going to high school, I was watching him when he was on WNBC TV in New York. And when I got a chance to catch up with him last week in Vegas, I said to him, he wrote me a letter because I was interested in getting into broadcast journalism at the time. And I told him, I still have that letter you sent to me when I was a senior in high school. He looked at me, he said, really? I said, yes, I swear to you, I still have this letter that you sent to me when I was growing up trying to become a reporter because you gave me all these tips of the trade of how to become what you're doing. And it was like a throwback, and it was amazing that he actually remembered. And he was one of the very few I looked up to while I was growing up watching news. But eventually I wanted to be more of a broadcaster and radio. And I guess it happened by accident to be a broadcaster and radio. I love it. I know people think that radio is not the same sexy thing as television, but there are different angles to it because you ladies work in sports, there are sports talk shows now on television. I live in a market where we have 2 major networks where they have sports talk shows in Boston and in New York every day. So I don't believe that whole, there's no such thing as making radio work on TV. ESPN does it as well, because I was doing that for a while when they had Mike and Mike on TV as well as radio. So the business has changed a lot in terms of you don't have to necessarily be a TV personality to get into the business. You can be a good reporter as a print reporter or as a radio broadcaster, and you can still make your mark. And of course, all this social media we have now, for example, you don't even have to be in front of a camera. You can just go on your own phone and Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and boom. And there you are. You're in front of a camera, but you're not on not on television per se, but you are being exposed to the rest of your audience because of the kind of backing and the kind of clout that you built because of your reputation of you being a versatile reporter or a journalist.
And many times people with print backgrounds do better than folks with TV backgrounds because they have beats and they are super, super, super knowledgeable about those specific and TV folks have beats as well. But I've seen a lot of people who have a background in print that are on national television right now, because you can teach that stuff. You can't teach the knowledge. You can't teach yourself how to read and stuff. So
It teaches you how to be aggressive. That's why, because it teaches you how to be a hunter for stories. You got to be aggressive and going out and uncovering stories. You got to do research. You have to go outside your comfort zone and actually go chase down people to get information. So I think that's what you're alluding to, why it's different for print reporters, because they live and eat, breathe, and sleep those beats all the time. So they know it like the back of their hand. And that's why you see them on those national platforms like CNN or MSNBC, because they know they have the scoop that others do not, even though they might work in that same market, but you're with the same person all the time. So that means you have an exclusive that others don't have, which makes you more reputable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, one thing I will say about print reporters, especially in sports, they try not to just do what's on the press conference or what TV is getting with the interviews. The players give the best stuff when the cameras go away from them. They give the best stuff when there isn't a camera and a microphone and all kind of things in their face, when they're just having that face-to-face conversation with the print reporters. And sometimes they have great scoops, they have great stories. And that comes from, as he said, like hunting them down and finding an angle or like noticing something about them and holding it until all the camera crews go away, and then they kind of just like, hey, so I noticed this, and what is this about? And then they hold that story and it comes out, and then TV does a story on the story, so
Oh yeah. We love referencing newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. And so I definitely that is an art to be able to talk to people without and getting them to say stuff, more on a personal level versus the more politically correct answers that you'll get when there's a camera in their face.
I'm going to be shifting the conversation a little bit, but I want to ask Faith and Elisa, what are some difficulties you faced in the industry as a woman, especially being non-white women? And for you, Mike, I want to ask, as a man, what are some differences in the industry between experiencing that as a man or a woman? So whoever wants to go first can go ahead and jump in.
I mean, I'll say that, and I'll have to say that because of the shifts in the industry, thank God, I don't think I've experienced certain things as much as women who are 20, 30 years older than me have experienced, because things have changed, but there's still a lot going on. Let's believe that. And as a woman of color, especially as a Black woman, we have this thing called the token syndrome, and Elisa might have it as well, where it's like, okay, we can have one or two of y'all, but after that, we have enough and we're going to stick to what we know. I think that that's changing, thankfully. The way that I wear my hair on television now, I was told when I was first getting into the industry, don't wear braids. They're not going to take you seriously. I've worn braids since I was like 4. So why? So I switched to weaves and wigs and took my edges out. The braids are back. We're good. And that's just, it's 2022. Like, this is what I look like. If you would like me.
We like the braids, by the way. Keep those braids.
But it was a lot. It took a lot. And you'll notice a lot of Black women, it was called vacation hair. So we would go, and mind y'all, it takes 8 hours to put these in, right? And it's very painful, and you would have it. I'm not going to have this for a weekend and then go back to my perm press. Like, no, like, this is what y'all get. And thankfully we're able to do that, because for me, it was a woman named Leah Uko, who was working in Los Angeles at the time. And I saw she had her locks on air. I screenshotted that, took it to my boss. I was like, hey, she has locks on air. Like, can I get twist? And she was like, yeah, cool. And I'm like, what? So things like that are changing, right? As a woman in the industry, and shout out to my colleague Keldy, who just jumped on. As a woman in the newsroom and in the industry, sometimes depending on what space you are in, especially if it's a male dominated area, like if you're covering a finance story or even politics, and sometimes, the guys, and it doesn't happen all the time, but girls, especially pretty women, sometimes, or even in the locker room, they'll think like, they look at you as like sex symbol, or we don't take you seriously enough, and you got to toughen up your voice and give them a nice handshake and be like, oh, I mean business. Like, why do we have to do all that? Like, just listen to what I have to say, But unfortunately, sometimes that's what you have to do. And I think that it's changing. I thank God for all of the women that are on TV right now, taking up space, really demanding, and not just on TV, the news directors, the managers. Like, can we get an amen for those folks? Because that's who's bringing us on, right? And I think it will continue to shift. It's a generational thing, but we have to keep pushing that button. Like, we have to basically, like Elisa was saying, show our personalities. We have to take up space and say, this is what you're getting. Like from the interview, like, I'm not going to change. This is what I'm going to get. I'm good. But is this what you want? Do you want the authenticity, or do you want what y'all were doing in 1920s or the 50s? When did TV start? I think the 50s. So
It was the 50s.
yeah.
50s.
Around there, close enough.
50s.
Well, part.
Radio started in the 1920s, though, so I know that.
There
for
you
a
go.
fact.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, to Faith's point, you know, I don't want to make it seem like it's been super hard, right? Because there's women before us that paid those ways and had those battles so that we wouldn't have to fight as hard, but we're still fighting, right? And I think within sports, the biggest thing I learned was like, I'm 5'1". Like my mindset, I'm 6'2", but I'm 5'1". Like I'm 5'2", 5'3" on a good day. And you know, being a younger looking Latina, like sometimes like they think I'm an intern because I'm little and I look young, and they're just like, oh my God, like, oh, let her in. Like she's probably her first internship. And I'm just like, boy, like I cover this team every day. And so being able to maneuver those things, right? And the first thing my dad taught me was how to shake someone's hand, very sturdy. And it's funny because I meet people all the time. I think Faith's been in literally when this happened. I shake someone's hand, they're just like, whoa, it's a really strong handshake. And I'm like, I know. And then there's like, yeah, great. Did I teach you that? And I'm like, yeah. That's great. Yeah. And they'll literally talk about my handshake for like 10 seconds. They're like, yeah, she has a really strong hand, or be careful. She's gonna, and I'm just like you wouldn't do that to a dude. Like, you know, so you have like those little quips, right? And so in sports, the only thing that I'm always running into is, do you date the athletes? Do you go out with them? Like, oh my gosh, like, did you mess with, and I'm just like, no, like, no, first of all, half of them is married, half of them cheat on their wife anyway. Like, I don't got time for that. Like, I just go in, do my job, and get out.
Lord have
And
mercy. Oh my God.
but the thing is, like, a lot of the guys, like, there is a shift in the climate within players too. Obviously, you have your bad apples every now and again, but most of the locker rooms I've been in, they don't care about you. They just want you to go in, ask the questions, and that's it. You know, the only way that they're gonna judge you is if you ask a dumb question, or if you ask a question like, how do you feel? Or what were you thinking? You know, you want to find different ways to hit them with things that, you know, they're not used to. And you don't have to break down. They know what happened in the game. You don't have to sit there and say, hey, you know, in the bottom of the night was a 3-2 count. Yeah, they were there. They know. But you can say, hey, you know, they walked, you know, Max Muncy before you. You came off the bench. Does it give you added motivation to get a hit when they walk the guy in front of you to get to you? You know what I mean? That's the kind of question you ask them. But, you know, there are those moments where certain players will try to push boundaries. Certain reporters will try to push boundaries. I mean, we just had the scandal with the Houston Astros and the GMs and the women reporters there. So it's not like it's gone. But I have seen a shift in a good way of male reporters being allies to female reporters on Twitter, on live TV, like coming in to defend them and also vouch for them, and vice versa, you know? And so the biggest thing that I've faced, I would say, is just people thinking that I'm like young, like super young, and to the point where they're like, oh, you just started, like, just wait. And then they'll see a player recognize me, or they'll see a player come up to me and give me a quote, and they're just like, oh, like, and then you see the shift in them. You see the shift go from like, you're just a kid to, oh, you're a colleague. Oh, well, oh, that's great. Like, oh, where are you from? Where do you work at? And da-da-da-da. And so you kind of fight those, you know, those battles. But you also need to learn how to play the game a little bit, you know, like certain things you wear, certain ways that you act. Like, you know, whenever I speak to young teenage girls, like I always tell them, like, you don't stand a certain way. You know, when you talk to a player, you don't lean. You know, you don't move, you know, you stand up straight, you ask your questions, because things can always be interpreted a certain way. When I first walked in the locker room, they always told me, if you have a notebook, look at your notebook, look at the ceiling, or look at the floor. They're like, that's it. Those are 3 places you got to look when you're in a locker room. And, you know, because guys, they're going to do what they do, which is fine. Like, we're in your space. The clubhouse, the locker room, it's your space. So when I would go in to interview, you know, players, they'd come out the shower. I literally turn around, I tap my audio guy, I'm like, let me know when he has pants on. He'd put pants on, he'd tap me, and I turn right back around. I'd be like, hey, let me know when you're ready to go. All right, cool. All right, I'm ready. Okay, great. Ask them this question. Hey, appreciate your time. Hey, no problem, Lisa. Done. So you have to find a way to kind of balance all the noise and just go in, do your job, do it well. And then, the respect will come. As we all know, respect is earned, it's not given. And when you show your talent and you show what you can do, players respect that. Players respect that. Reporters respect that. But you have to earn your stripes. You don't just walk in and they're gonna assume people are gonna assume something about you when you walk in, especially if you're tall and gorgeous or if you're whatever it is. But if you go in, you handle your business and you treat people with respect. I've had no issues since then. So obviously, like, it's always a fight, but I'm fighting more about the wage gap than anything else. So,
Yeah.
On what you said, do you guys feel like there's different expectations from you, whether it be like you, Faith, being on TV, you gotta be, maybe a male correspondent doesn't have to be good looking, but for you to be hired, you gotta be a little bit more good looking, or you need to fight for different things, the bars may be higher for you. Do you feel like you guys are hold to different standards?
It depends on who you work for, I would say. I would say that all the people that I work for, I personally have not experienced it. And I'm also fairly young in the game, right? But I've heard of tons of stories where you're literally sitting next to the guy doing the exact same job and you're getting paid 20K less. Why? Why is that? Or there was an anchor duo who they did this experiment where the male anchor wore the exact same suit for like 20 days and basically just changed his tie, the same shirt, same suit, different tie. And the woman would wear like the same dress like every once a week or something like that. And she would get tons of emails. Didn't she just wear that last week? Because people naturally, they look at a woman, they judge how, is her neck getting wrinkled? Why didn't she do her makeup today? I remember I got an email. I was late to my live shot. It was 5 a.m. I had to be on air. I didn't have any makeup on. I had 10 emails. Are you sick? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, but did you hear about the story that I did this morning? Like, are you good? Like, did you avoid that area? But that's just how folks are with women. As in like getting treated differently. I personally have not necessarily experienced it myself, but I'll say ... yet, because I'm still early in my career. And it could absolutely happen. So I'll pass that down to Elisa.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of zoned out a bit. So can you repeat the question? I am honest. I am an honest person. I could have tried to milk. I was like, I'm just asked what the question was.
So the question was, do you feel like you're expected different things from your male counterparts? Like they expect, because that's what you touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Where you have to like pay attention to different things that probably men who do the same job don't have to pay attention to.
So ditto literally on everything that Faith said. Putting it in a sports context, I have to know a little more or about most things. So I know a little bit about a lot of things, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, flag football, kind of anything really, soccer. Just try to find some kind of nugget in my back pocket at all times. Because one thing about men and women in sports, men can make mistakes and it's not a big deal, but if a woman makes a mistake on air, it's like, oh, like she doesn't know anything, like and like they'll go in on her. But like you'll have a guy like say like, oh yeah, like so and so played with so and so and they never played together. But oh, he just messed up. Or the guy would be like, oh yeah, my bad, guys, and was like, oh, it's okay, we happens to us all the time. But if a woman does that, it's like, oh, she doesn't know football, she doesn't know that player, she doesn't know that team. And it's so funny because that actually just happened to me. I was on the radio in Vegas and I was multitasking, which I probably shouldn't have while I was on the radio, but I was multitasking and they asked me about Juan Soto's contract and I confused in my mind Juan Soto with Freddie Freeman contract because they both been with their respective teams for a long time. But Freddie left the Atlanta Braves to go to the Dodgers. So they had asked me like, oh, like, do you think that Juan Soto would do the same? And I assumed he was with the Braves, but he's with the Nationals. So I had said he was with the Braves. I was like, oh yeah, whole thing on it. And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, he is not on the Braves. He is on the Nationals. And you know, I corrected myself, and literally the host goes, wow, you know, I didn't even realize you said that. You know what I'm saying? He was just like, so, you know, it's just one of those things where I instantly caught it, you know, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did I not know? And da-da-da-da-da. And I was like so hard on myself. And after, you know, my boy, you know, my friend Q, he messaged me and he was like, don't be hard on yourself. He's like, I literally did that twice before you even came on. And I'm like, yeah, but he was like, it's only going to be a big deal if you make it a big deal. He's like, you did it. It happens all the time. Like, let it go. And that's been the hardest thing, is to let go of those mistakes, because you want to be on top of it all the time. And so I will say, like, I don't know everything. I don't. But I do take pride when like someone tries to get me and I get them back, or like someone tries to like quiz me and I get them back, or I surprise them with my knowledge. But at the same time, it kind of bugs me, because I'm like, you shouldn't be surprised that I know this. You shouldn't be shocked that like I'm good, or I know what I'm talking about. Like, that shouldn't surprise you. So there is a difference in that, you know, between men and women in sports. But like I said, like the good thing is that you have those allies that either back you up and like, man, don't sweat it, like it's fine. Or there are some men that will tell you like, all right, well, next time, this is what I do to keep my players in line. This is when I'm talking about multiple players, these are certain tricks that I use to keep them all lined up. Or sometimes they're like, I never mention the team, because half the time I don't remember what it is. So they'll help me in that way. But there is different standards when it comes to that. But you know, you kind of just take the punches, and you just try your best to know everything. And also honesty, you know, that was the biggest thing that I learned also. And, you know, Mike, I'm gonna let you chime in on that too. But sometimes I feel like people ask me what's written, and I'll be honest, I'm like, you know what? I haven't read too much about that, but you know, this is what I think about it, but you know, I'm gonna look into that more. Just being honest about what you know. And it's okay to have an opinion on something, but don't make up an opinion just to be part of the conversation.
Well, for
Totally.
me, look, I am still wearing a sports coat, and no matter what I do in this profession, I know I'm a radio guy. People say, well, you're on radio, so nobody really sees what you look like because they only just hear your voice and that's it. Well, when I'm going out in the field and covering stories, I like to dress to impress anyway, because you never know who's going to be out there looking at you when you're, first of all, as a Black man, we already know this, it's already the stereotype that we have to carry ourselves a certain way as is. So I like to dress to impress in my profession. And even if I'm wearing a sports coat, it shows that I am about business. I'm not just going to throw something on and say I'm going to an assignment because it's a radio job and nobody really cares to see what I look like. Because you got all these TV folks and people that you know that are prominent figures, politicians, people that are really famous are going to see you and they're going to remember you and say, I remember when I saw you, you were at this event and I didn't remember you had this on it. Believe me, people do notice what you look like when they see you out in the field all the time. So I take my wardrobe very, very seriously. I can care less. I can give a damn if I'm on the middle of a podcast. The fact of the matter is, I'm in the general public. And in this age of social media, people will snap photos and say, you see what that reporter looked like? Look at that wardrobe. And I know a lot of people like to shame people when they don't look a certain way, especially when it's in media. And I know ladies have it the worst, because the fact of the matter is, on television, it is so much worse, because even if you look your very best, and as we all know, you can't make everybody happy with the way you look. You're always going to have some trolls out there or some haters that are just going to say, well, I don't like your braids, or I don't like the way your hair looks because I just don't like it. Meanwhile, you look drop dead gorgeous, but to some viewers, you're not even what they call something to look at. So it's not, you're really, and I see this a lot, and I read it on social media a lot, that women have to go through this a lot. And I really feel for the ladies in this business because they take it the worst. Some say, well, men don't have to worry about it as much. Well, I disagree, because as a Black man, I care about the way I look. I care about how I carry myself. I care about my health. I care about what people do look at me as a reporter, as somebody who takes this job very seriously. People say to me, oh, you're wearing a sports coat today. Or I'm in the newsroom. Hey, you're wearing a sports coat, because it's my job as a professional. I am a professional journalist. I get paid as a professional. So I need to look like a professional at all times. When the clock is over, when my shift is over, I'll strip off this sports coat and put on my t-shirt and whatever else I want to put on. But when I'm on that clock from 9 to 5, or whatever time I have to work, or wherever I'm working, this will stay on because I am presenting myself, not just for myself, but I'm representing the company that I work for. And I don't want them to say, well, they have a bad rep people the way they dress because they don't dress properly. Well, no, because I know that people are watching my every move that I make out here in these streets. And I am be damned if somebody's going to say, well, this guy didn't really look like he was a reporter. He looked like somebody that just came out of his bed. And you'll never say that about me because I know that I carry myself a certain way. And even though it's a radio job, people do see you because they hear you and they remember that face and they put that face to a voice when they hear you on the radio. They say, oh, I remember him. I saw him that's who that guy is. But for the ladies, though, I really feel for you because it's so much scrutiny you have to face and it's not fair. It's disgusting. And unfortunately, for a woman of color, especially, it's just 20 times worse because it's always the stamina is that we have to do 200 times more than the other side. And I think you know where I'm going with this, especially as me as a Black man. I think my whole gist of it is that being in the radio business here in Connecticut, I feel like I have a bigger responsibility to be the voice of those in those urban communities because there's very few of me alone that work in this state on the radio. I think I'm the only one that does news radio anchoring in the state of Connecticut. So that puts a beacon on my shoulders to say, I have to do this because people need to hear that there's a Black man who gives a damn about what goes on in the cities of Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, all the urban communities that don't have those kinds of voices that I provide for them to those stories. So that puts even more emphasis on what I do for a living to do it to the best of my ability because I'm talking to them as well.
Speak on
it.
It's the truth. You know that.
Well, since we're running a little bit out of time, I want to ask you guys to wrap up. What is some good advice you can give to our audience here who is trying to break into the industry, who are just starting? What are some, in quick words, things we can do?
Network. Like, meet every single person that you can absolutely meet. And like, I know that's what everybody says, but I'm telling you, like, all of the jobs that I've gotten so far is because either I put my stuff out there and somebody found it and asked around about me and somebody knew somebody, or somebody was like, hey, you should apply for this. Like, find a mentor, find somebody that you can trust, that you look up to, that you feel comfortable with asking them about this, and that. Go to NABJ, go to SPJ conventions, go to NAHJ, pass out business cards, like, come prepared. Like Mike was saying, dress the part that you want to be, shake those hands like Elisa, and send out those emails. Like, you have to put in the work beforehand and let people know. Make sure if you're on camera, make sure your reel is tight. Send it to a friend or send it to somebody before you just say, oh, this is good. Ask people for help. That's my biggest advice. Network and ask people for help and find a mentor who's going to help you. Because without those things, you can try to do it, but you're going up against competition that have those communities that are pushing them up there. So why do it by yourself when you don't have to? So ask for help.
I think it's work hard. I think that's one of the biggest pet peeves of mine is that you have to have a craft. And I think one of the things about being a journalist, and I think I come across this a lot as young professionals I mentor as well, is that they have to have a skill that's called writing. You want to be a journalist, I tell them, you have to be able to, trust me, I tell them that I can say it till I'm blue in the face, write. Have a skill that tells you how to write. If you're going to be a reporter, or anchor, whatever the case, you have to have a skill that involves writing because you cannot be a reporter or a journalist if you don't have writing skills. And I think I say this a lot because a lot of these youngsters are coming out of these universities and colleges with skills that, okay, you've done A, B, and C, but unfortunately it doesn't reflect what it shows on your resume because there are certain skills you don't have that you should have before you go apply for a job. And I also say to them is that you have to be a jack of all trades, meaning learn everything you can about the industry, learn how to write, learn how to produce, learn how to edit, learn how to anchor, report, everything you can get your hands on, because this is not the old days where you can just do one job and that's it. Now you have these different positions they have for openings in these companies where you're doing editing, you're shooting, you're writing, you're doing everything now, because that's what the business has come to. You're doing more of the yeoman's work that was where you could just be an anchor and now I'm just an anchor. No, you're more than just an anchor now. Now you're a reporter, you're an anchor, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're an editor, you're a podcaster, you're also on social media. You're breaking stories on these platforms now. So it's like you have to know every tool of the trade to get involved in this business. And the piggyback what Faith said, yes, networking is a big part of that. Talk to your advisors, talk to people in the business, go to these conventions that we just came from in Las Vegas last week. Go out there and talk to people, know who you can talk to. And I also say, don't just go to any old person, by the way, because not everybody is going to be there to support your every move that you're making in this business. And I say that because there are some of them out there that don't want to see you excel. There's a lot of haters around you too, not just competition, but you got to be mindful that there's others that are just envious of what you got going on because they see potential in you that they don't want to see you excel. So make sure you get with the right crowd and the right person that actually invests in you so that you can get to that level that you want to get to, because that person is showing you that they really want you to get there and there's no strings attached to it.
Yeah. Echoing literally ditto Faith, ditto Michael. And I think the thing would add to that is just be resilient in the sense, have thick skin, because, not everyone's going to handhold you through this. And sometimes like you have to follow up, check in, you make connections. And the biggest mistake that I see people do is that they'll make a connection and in their first email, they ask for something. Hey, it was so great to meet you. Are there any internships available? Are they jobs? And it's just like, I just met you. I'm not going to vouch for you. I just met you. So how about you give me some time and let me get to you? And that's my biggest pet peeve. People see me work at Dodgers. They see me work at NFL and they'll message me and they'll give me this beautiful message about how they're, love journalism. And and in the same message, they're like, yes, I just want to know if there are any openings at Dodgers. I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know if you're lazy. I don't know. You might be the best person for this job. I don't know you. And so give yourself time to meet these people. The biggest thing that I do is like, whenever I make a connection, I find reasons to message them like, hey, like happy holidays, or hey, like the holidays just passed. I don't ask them for anything. Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing great. I know the football season is going on. I hope your beat is going great. If I'm ever in town, would love to catch up. Just do those little quips, because the biggest thing is to maintain those networks. You can make any network at any time. It's maintaining them that's hard, and finding ways, to get them to see you in a more genuine way. And that's the biggest thing. I don't mind helping you once I know you, but don't ask me for something right off the bat, because that makes me feel like you're only talking to me because I work here, because I work for NFL, because I work for Dodgers. I do love connecting with people, but just make sure that you maintain those relationships in that way. Also, social media is a gift and a curse, and I think one of the biggest things that I was told when it comes to social media, it's like, when in doubt, don't. If you think like, you probably shouldn't. If there's a doubt in your mind, you probably shouldn't tweet it. You probably shouldn't post it. Just let it live, and that was told to me by Jay Adande, one of my mentors from ESPN. And he was like, everyone's quick to give their opinion. Sometimes you need to take a breath before you just start talking. Sometimes you need to filter yourself. And it's good to have a strong opinion, but just be prepared to stand on it. Be prepared to own it, into the sense of like, if someone calls you out on it, you can confidently say, yeah, I did say that. Yeah, I did say that, Mitchell Trubisky is a bust. I did say that. And this is why. You never want to say something and be like, well, I was young, or oh, I was no. If you're going to say something, say it with your chest, say it with conviction, and say it with confidence, and be willing to stand on whatever point you make on social media and off. But it's also a tool because it's helped me connect to many reporters, many, news stations, many things. And it's a way to, like Faith says, like, to showcase your stuff, As Michael said, you never know who's watching. You never know who's following you. You never know whose kid is following you. You never know whose brother, whose uncle, whose friend is following you, is following your career. And so you putting something out there, I've seen it happen for good and bad. I've seen people that don't deserve to get on TV go viral, and now they're on TV. I've seen people that really deserve to be on TV go viral and go on TV, so there's different ways to do it. It's such a beneficial tool. The best positive thing I've seen is like, I'll see college students say, hey guys, this is my reel, would love a retweet, just, show support. and they'll get, 300, 400 retweets off of that, right? Because they're just asking their community for help. And you never know who's going to see it. You never know who's going to comment on it. So show your creativity, show your talent. But like I said, be prepared to stand on whatever it is that you put out there. Know that when you put it out there, it's yours, it's attached to your name. And as long as you're willing to stand by it, then it's all good. But just be aware of that. Use it for connections, use it for amplification. And, me and Renee, we met on Instagram and Twitter, and she came on my podcast. And then she put me in a Twitter group that literally the whole Twitter group is like 15 journalists that just drop their links. Hey guys, retweet this. Hey, so-and-so, I just did this story. And we all retweet each other. Just to share it, because it's just part of that networking of being like, look, I got you. You want me to retweet this? I got you, or I'll share it, or I'll like it, or I'll comment on it, so that it falls into the algorithm within Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So finding those, those niche groups on Twitter as well is such a good tool for you guys. So again, when in doubt, don't. And use your social powers for good.
Absolutely. We're coming to the end of this panel, so give me 1 second. Bear with me. I would like to thank all of our panelists who joined us here today, and everybody else who jumped on Zoom to be here with us. Thank you, all of you, for your support. And if you want to find out more about Planted Not Buried, you can visit our website, plantednb.com, or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, or Facebook. And we hope to see you again on the next panel.
Yes, guys, please use LinkedIn. Faith already got on me about it. Use your
Yes.
LinkedIn.
Use LinkedIn for networking.
Use
big time.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is a big tool today. Yes,
Yes.
LinkedIn.
Use that
Pay
more.
for it. It's worth it. The $15.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's called an investment in your career, so use it.
It is. Trust me. So that's our last advice to you guys. Please use your LinkedIn account.
This is not a paid advertisement.
Shameless plug, but LinkedIn is a good tool to use for networking.
It's true. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I appreciate everyone's ears and attention. Again, sorry for the looking down. We have to post and stuff. So it's preseason.
This is what we like to see, you working and busy.
Yeah.
Multitasking. That's what we do for a living as journalists. We got to do all this stuff in one fell swoop.
Yeah. The NFL doesn't sleep either. So
No.
No.
You're
Well, thank
right.
you